Brilliant. Okay. So this is what we're going to talk about for our first webinar. We're going to be discussing forming and managing committee meetings. I'm Paula, you already met Lucy, and we're both travel officers with Antarctica. And as you can imagine, by the time you get to our age, you've been to quite a few meetings and you've had experience with these sort of things. So we're just going to have a quick run through on committee meetings and our take on things, especially related to the Green Skills flag as well. Okay, so we've got a little agenda there. First part I'm going to go through, I'm going to run through what is a committee, why do we form one, how best to form one within your school, the fundamentals of the committee, and I'll give you an example of a committee structure from a school that we have down in Limerick. And then the second part of the seminar, Lucy's going to be talking with you about traditional committee roles, subcommittees, planning for your meeting, facilitating it, and just a meeting structure in general. Okay, so we get started. So what is a committee? What is a Green Skills committee? How are they formed? So usually they're formed by students and teachers and occasionally community members. So by that I mean, if you're working with your Tidy Towns, you might invite them in for one of your committee meetings. If you've been doing a walkability audit, you might make contact with your local road safety officer. Same with the cyclability audits. So they might be generally students and teachers, but occasionally you might bring community members in as well. You could even have local shop members might occasionally join your meetings. If you were putting on an action day or a big event and you wanted some input from the local community as well. But usually they're students and teachers. And what we found working with Green Schools is the more students versus teacher ratio, the better. It runs better if it can be more student-led, as opposed to having a whole lot of teachers just telling students what to do. Make it your committee, see how it works for you. By being the committee, it's going to facilitate the 7 steps of this flag. It's going to get you working around bringing your ideas to the table, how you can action them, how you can make changes. You're basically going to be the driving force behind the theme, and you'll be able to do that through the committee by following your 7 steps and getting your work done. Okay, so why do we form one? We basically all have a voice, we know that, but we're actually entitled to have our views heard. And a great way of doing that is through a committee. We're all global citizens and we all have a right to our opinions. And if we have ideas, it's a great place to share them. And we know that by lots of people coming together and sharing their ideas and working together, we can make positive environmental changes. But how do we form a committee? Possibly in your school, you've already got one up and running. Maybe it's been running for years and that's fab. Or maybe you're brand new to this and you're not entirely sure how to form it. This is one idea we have, and that is just advertise. Treat it like a job. You could have a little poster like this. You could pop it on your notice board. You could put it on your Google Teams, your social medias. However you manage to get your point across, pop up your advert. Tell them what you're looking for. Really sell the role. What information are you going to give them? If you're looking for people to join your committee, you have to be straight with people. Tell them what you need. Talk about your skills. What qualities are needed? Are you a good communicator? Do you have a passion for the environment? Are you willing to put the time in? These are all skills you need, but they're also skills that you're going to gain as well. As you're working with the other committee members, you're going to be learning from people too. What are the benefits of joining the committee? By being a committee member, you're basically an advocate for the rest of your school. You're a VIP as such. You're bringing your ideas to the table, but you're also bringing other people's ideas to the table. You're going to be learning new skills. You're going to be learning how to do walkability audits, how you can do mapping seminars for your peers. You're also going to be making new friends likely as well, because within committees, they're made up of lots of different year groups. So there'll be people in there you don't know, you haven't really seen before, but you might strike up a friendship with them. Be specific with people. Tell them exactly what you need from them and what you want from them. How much time is going to be needed? Is this, oh, I don't know, 30 minutes once a month? Or is it every Tuesday in your lunch break, you're going to be having a meeting for 45 minutes? Be specific. Tell people what you want. When you're in the process of looking for new members for your committee, or even just changing people, maybe someone's on their exam year or they're on TY or they're doing another project, there'll always be an influx of people coming in and out of the committee as well. That can be quite normal. But a good way of getting people is to have application forms. If you're in a really big school, you might get a lot of people applying for your committee. And realistically, a committee of 50, 60 students isn't going to work too well. So you could introduce application forms for the student, get them to sell themselves. How can they be of benefit to your committee? What can they bring to the table? Okay, the fundamentals. What are we talking about here? Leadership skills, leadership styles. Within a committee, we've all been in committees, I'm sure, where you have an autocratic style of leadership, or somebody does, whereby there's one leader of the committee and they just tell everybody else what to do. They're given out jobs and they're told when to have them done. Does that bring out the best in people? Sometimes it does, but sometimes a more positive way of working is to have a democratic style of leadership, whereby everyone is on a par. You're all coming together with your ideas, you're working together, and you're bringing all your ideas to the table, and you can decide amongst yourselves what gets given priority, what's going to work. Working in this way it allows for creativity. It allows people to bring their notions forward rather than just saying, okay, I've been given one task today, I better finish that. You're allowed to come with your ideas. And that helps to motivate the committee as well. It gets everybody working in a positive way. Responsibilities, understanding your role within the committee. What do we mean by that? So when you're in a committee, we would expect people to come in having read the agenda, which would be sent out before the meeting. What's expected of you? What issues are going to arise? Did I have any actions from the previous meeting I should have closed out if I couldn't manage it? How am I going to put this across? Be aware of, when you do commit to a committee, that there are responsibilities attached to it. It's not just going to be coming for a chat every second Tuesday in the canteen. It might be, but there are going to be roles attached to that as well, and jobs. Communication. Are you able to communicate? Are you able to get your point across? Is everyone being understood within the committee? As part of the committee and being a member, you might be asked to bring a notion forward from somebody else. Are you able to get that message across fully? If not, how can you do that? Can you talk to somebody else? Can you have a one-on-one with your Green Schools coordinator? But being able to communicate positively and clearly is really important within a committee. Your time management. This is a big one. You're going to be working on limited time. You have less than 2 school years to do your flag, and there's a lot of things you're going to want to get done within that time. You're going to have a lot of ideas coming to the table, as well as the things that you have to do to maintain your flag or get your flag. So what are you going to do? You're going to prioritise. There's no point coming in with a brilliant idea to have a sponsored cycle and you're going to have it during Bike Week. There's no point talking about that in October. It's too far away. You need to prioritise what you're going to do now. What can you get done in that first quarter? How can you plan your actions to get them done within a suitable time? Active listening. What do we mean by this? So with active listening, you might have someone come into the committee meeting one day and they've got a great idea, but everyone's in a rush and somebody just writing down the minutes and, oh, that's great, Sally, thanks for that. We'll pop that in the agenda, or we'll pop that in the minutes, and we'll give someone a task for that. That's not really active listening. You've heard what someone said and you've made a note of it, but you've not given somebody the time. You've not let them really talk. By active listening, or by active, it's talking about verbal and non-verbal. Are you really listening to someone? Are you looking at them? Are you making eye contact? Are you asking questions about what they've brought to the table? How can it be put into the agenda? Who can work with it? Are you engaging with people? This is all active listening, and it gives everyone such a buzz if you think that your point has been heard and that you're being taken seriously as part of the committee. Problem solving. As we've talked about, your time is going to be short. You're going to have a lot of ideas coming in, I'm sure. How are you going to get everything sorted? Do you just pop it in the meetings and keep coming back to it, and then the next time you keep coming back to it? Or perhaps do you have a brainstorming session? Do you decide that your next meeting you're going to meet up maybe 20 minutes earlier and you're just going to have a brainstorming session of the actions you want to get covered in that particular month? How are you going to get round it? Facilitation, group dynamics. When you're putting people together, there's always going to be some kind of issue to work with. Who works best with who? Do you have maybe a first year has joined the group and they're really committed and they're so passionate, but they're very, very quiet and they're not great at getting their point across? How are you going to help them in that meeting? Could you possibly pair them up with somebody who's slightly older, someone who's been on a committee before or been on that committee? How are you going to get the best from people? How are you going to encourage participation? These are all fundamentals basically of a committee. How are we getting the best from people? How can we all work together? And it's quite important that you know what your responsibility is, but also how to listen to someone, how to prioritise things, how to engage in brainstorming. Are you going to do mind mapping? How are you going to get the best out of people if you see someone struggling who's really not engaging with the committee? How can you help them? These are all important fundamentals of committees. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about a Green Skills Committee we had down in Limerick, really large secondary school, and I think they had a lot of excitement about the committee and a lot of people wanted to get on it. And they decided what they would do is they would split it into two. They would have their core committee, which was made up of the heads of each year from 1 to 6 and their Green Skills coordinator. But then they also had a subcommittee that was made up of the other year groups. Somebody from each year was elected by their peers to be the spokesperson for that particular peer. And then they would communicate with the core committee. Now, it wasn't a one-way thing, it was a two-way thing. So the two groups worked together. So it was a whole school approach, and it worked really well because everyone felt like they were engaged within the flag, or whatever your committee meeting might be about. It's important to feel like that you're part of it, even if it's just giving somebody else an idea. And this worked really well. So that might be an idea for you if you're finding, if you've got a really big school or you've got a lot of people who want to be on your committee and they're all really good and they're all really worthy, perhaps you could split it into your core and your sub. So that's just a few ideas. I'm going to slot it over now to Lucy, who's going to start part 2.
Thanks, Paula. So yeah, in this section, I'm going to be talking a bit more about the types of roles that you might take within your committee. So generally, having clear roles and responsibilities can help a committee to work more effectively. And as Paula mentioned, thinking about the skills you have within your group is important. Thinking about people's particular strengths and interests might help them to decide on an area that they would like to take responsibility for. The roles can be interchangeable, so you can change. You might want to look at a particular area and then take on another job within the committee later in the year. Okay, so the next slide, please, Paula. So some key roles within a committee. Well, probably the key role is that of the chairperson. So this is a really strong leadership role, and it can be appointed by the teacher or it can be appointed by nomination. So people put themselves forward for it, and sometimes there's a vote to decide who becomes the chairperson. So the chairperson, along with the coordinator, would usually prepare the agenda for each meeting. And they're going to be responsible for presiding over the meetings, keeping the discussion focused, ensuring that topics are addressed and that they're done so within the allocated time frame. Another really important person is the secretary. Now, the secretary's job is to help keep the group organized. They will be in charge of recording minutes of the meeting, typing those minutes up, so being able to pick out the important points and then distributing those minutes so that everyone gets a copy of what was talked about at the meeting. They also might take a role in organizing the times and the location for the meeting. And then you would have the general committee members. So this would cover other people who are going to just be generally involved, general participants, that they will be giving their input generally, but also within particular areas of work that might interest them. Okay, so next slide, Paula. So some examples of these particular roles that the general committee members might undertake are listed here on the slide. So one example might be a notice board communication officer. Now, communication is vital to the success of your Green Schools work, and the notice board is a really important feature. So having somebody whose designated role is to take responsibility for this can ensure that your notice board is standout, that it's eye-catching, that it has information on it that people will want to stop and look at, will appreciate the content of whatever is displayed. So having somebody to take on that job, it might benefit somebody who's got a great vision. The things that you might want to put up on your Green Schools notice board might be listing your committee, putting up photos and names, putting up facts or quotes that might inspire or make students think about environmental issues. You might use your notice board for good news stories and to champion the successes that you've managed to achieve. Communication, as I say, is really important. So you might have other officers who are working on other areas of communication, things like writing the newsletter, things like doing up press releases if you wanted to give local media groups information about what you're doing. Another role that you might like to allocate is digital and social media officer. Okay, now this role might benefit somebody who is good at vlogging, somebody who is interested in social media, somebody who can add tweets and posts about the actions you're doing within the school. Another important role might be the Green Code Officer. The Green Code Officer might be responsible for looking at your Green Schools code. Can they create or come up with a song, a rap, a poem, a slogan? They might want to take responsibility for running a competition to decide your green code. They might take the lead in creating a video or a digital poster about how you present your green code. They might speak to the principal to see if the green code can be included in the school journals. Another role that could be taken is an events officer. This might suit somebody who is very organized and outgoing, who can be creative and come up with ideas as to how to make your event successful. Next slide, please, Paula. As Paula mentioned, you can have subcommittee roles. Now, I think a really good way of keeping previous themes work going is by allocating a subcommittee in each of these topics. So you might have a recycling subcommittee or a recycling officer, and this person is responsible for looking at the recycling system within the school, monitoring the waste that's produced, coming up with creative and inventive ways to reduce waste. You might have that within the topic of energy, within the topic of water, within the topic of travel. It depends what theme you're working on at the moment, but having those subcommittees to continue that work that you would have done previously is a fantastic way to just keep all of the Green Schools themes alive within your school. Okay, next slide, please, Paula. Okay, so when it comes to looking at actual meetings, how are you going to conduct your meeting? A really important part is planning in advance of your meeting, making sure that invitations have been sent out and that the agenda is given in advance. This allows committee members the opportunity to think if they have any updates that they need to give, and also gives them a chance to think about what their views are on particular topics. Thinking about where your meeting takes place. Does it take place in person or can it be a virtual meeting? I know secondary schools are really time poor, and an issue I often come across is when can you schedule the meetings? When can you get a time that everyone's available? And that's where I would encourage perhaps using the virtual platform so that you can perhaps meet at different times, maybe outside school times, to discuss essential actions within your action plan. Thinking about what will add value and enjoyment to your meeting. You want your meetings to be something that people want to come along to, that they understand that there is a benefit of their participation. Can you have little incentives, you know, like hold your meeting in the canteen, free hot chocolate to committee members? Anything you can think of to make your meeting an attractive place to be would be a good thing. And who needs to be there? Often you will have everybody required to attend a meeting, but not always. There might be actions that are just relevant to a subcommittee, and then they are only the ones that need to be invited. In general, keep things short and to the point, and always be mindful of how time poor everyone is. Okay, next slide, please, Paula. Okay, so the facilitation of the meeting. So as I mentioned, it's a very busy place in school. You want to ensure that the meetings are productive, that they're efficient, and that they are a good use of everyone's time. It's the responsibility of the coordinator and the chairperson to identify the main objectives of the meeting and that the intended outcomes are addressed. Timekeeping is so important. Make sure your meeting is efficient and that it doesn't drag on for too long. Stick to the finish line. It's so easy to get sidetracked, but really try hard not to. And that's a particular job for the chairperson. If something unexpected crops up during your meeting, save it for next time, or it can be discussed later through emails. Okay, next slide, please. So this is an example of a general meeting structure and the type of things that you might include. So the first point is opening the meeting. And again, this is usually done by your coordinator or your chairperson, and it includes a welcome. Take an attendance, so send around the sheet so that you've got a note of everyone that's there, and you could review the previous meeting minutes. Okay, your agenda. So as we've mentioned, this is a really important document. It's a list of items to be discussed, and it'll give information and updates, and it might include decision-making or voting on particular actions. Actions and tasks. So they're important. Who's going to do what and when does it need to be done by? And actually set these down in stone so that everyone is clear about what they're going off to undertake in advance of the next meeting. The secretary should be taking minutes that correspond to the agenda items so that there's that clear correlation between the two documents. Closing your meeting. Okay, so summarize the aims and intended outcomes and ask the group, does everyone feel that these things have been met? If they have, fantastic. Set the date for your next meeting. And then the post-meeting actions would include the secretary typing up the meeting minutes and distributing them. Make use of the platforms of Microsoft Teams or Google Classrooms. These are fantastic in helping you to continue to communicate after your meeting is finished. If you need to clarify any points, it's a really good platform to enable you to do that. Okay, so that provides you with the general structure for a meeting. And I guess just our final tip is that you can do it. You guys have so much that you can contribute to add to your Green Schools theme. So get stuck in, get involved. You can make a difference. Thank you.